In November of 2020, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Tugusanak Rinpoche taught on the 100 verses of Advice of Padampa Sangye, also known as 100 spiritual instructions to the Dingri people. Padampa Sangye was an 11th and 12th century great Indian Maha Siddha, or greatly realized being, who visited Tibet several times. His main disciple was Machik Labdrön, who founded the lineage of Chud, a system of practice based on Prajnaparamita for the purpose of cutting through the four maras and ego clinging. This is the second of a two-part series.
Jero gunjuren de daye ju kanza milika parab jirba tambi jizo tonin takbe jusum laman la kucha tsa majir katar kadam lamde tang mashan ka ju shibye jorwa to orje nyer sam tsorzo drubu singda namla kucha tsa the broken of jumps years of remain typical to some the enrollment the same Japocha changing Chinzi was a la cochas. Nilo Toba Jeva Shingi Lobs. All of the Talarian, I'm got a Yambisim Jetam, Sanji, Compound Rumbo, Chinny Chang. Tobaraja, the Chedo, Tambi, choose someone the Nis and the Turkian, the Yamson Leber Jebunyabi. Samba Shank of the Tokeba Samo set up the sensors. Tatila Kang, Sambaneta, Tiring around to Ladder Young, Tining Atuma. Oh, the Tingre. Oh, Tingrip Jazak. Any that train, you should save Japani, Teniam to Chishugins.
So once again, listen to these teachings with the intention that you will listen to them, listen to these profound teachings, and then put them into practice in order that you will be able to free all beings as limitless as space, all mother sentient beings as limitless as space, and bring them to the state of Buddhahood. And so with that intention, please listen to the teachings on today's teaching, which is continuing with our teaching from yesterday of the 100 verses of Padampa Sangye to the people of Dingri. And so today I'll be continuing from verse number 24. Let's.
Oh, that's young any Kangla Norio Tela Senam Jong, Jimba Chume Tongshi, Tingrawa, Kangla Wangyo Tela Digba Yo, Keda Wangdo Pongshi, Tingrawa, Keda Normangela Deva Me Sorcha, Kangla Trumpshi, Tingrawa, any Lasotati, any Tatama, Ta Kangla, any Noria Patelas, Tinian, any da Senamama Yore, Sore, Beneta, Casatola, Choshire to Yomara, Case Yoba Yena, Tinite, say, Goba the Chair, Mamma, Mountain Royal Mato, Tini, young ticket, Semju that Yomare. Then, oh, that did not yin, didn't tang as a pen any, that, nor yoba to sotam young, any, that, nor the sotam jiggy, yampain drop, any, Jimba chome the tongue, said about that, and it's like it me any mango jig, tachi, yampain drubia, anything I can get tachi, any. It's not the nigga mambo check da ngara to Zamboling Oye Blasso with the Tesu Cheddar, Jacob Tesoda, Gerba Chubo Tesoda. Any Teso got any mambo guitar, any Rosom mambo tang, tell us what a check water, Tesuta, Jimba Chume, the what you do, any channel to tell what you need to do. That's a 2G show go. Any then I get down around so go pay any 다 때문에 되는 거는 저 아니 가세 여봤듯이 그치 아니 다 보라 접게 대대바 얘는 되네 타마 가서 깔이 찍고도 제야마도 가야 용면도 왔다 때나기 가나 왕 여봤대라 아니 다야 되고요래서 내가 아니 가나 되네 되네 노르마와 대라양 되네 가서 대와 요 말에서도 왔다 tinde songzang da ngaran zu bena kashila da wang mejo tesu ke nor mejo tesu da nga chola nor te me samchin ke tonga chado wang mejo tesu la ya wang cha me bige ene da tonga je wang yoba tesu la dewa chimbo chi yore samgo wa samgo yore yang 대나기 니가 여저 저러다 빼는 개 트락바스다 빼는 노르마 왕 여바 얘네 다 ngaran 저거 빼 얘네 신신다고요 다 얘네 참이지 노량이요 왕양이요 개다여는 그 대화 체시도 차고라 이나야다 콩가게 체기나 방도도 나서 되니 어때 선상 ene ta te tamji dorna tini ngaran toga ene ta teso tamji tsama ta ngaran to ene dewa singete ya dewa chila me deba che thongde do wa ta dewa singete ya zo tini ngaran to ene ta range semni tsar matopa ina ta nga zo pena ene karisa pobran yanme kang rawo chegi nana tene doyo tam che tam de jabayena semla tene chi ngaran zu tape dewa meba ene nyoda chenbo tene ngaran zu yu de mejo ta ngaran zu chupo tam che la pat pe debayena nga zu hakko de res.
Those who get wealthy get miserly too. People of Dingri give generously without being partial. Whoever gets power acts sinfully too. People of Dingri abandon all desire for rank and power. Those with rank and riches are never happy and at ease. People of Dingri, get ready to claw at your chest in anguish. So, as it said here, whoever has wealth, to them, they're going to have miserliness, covetousness to that. They're not going to have contentment about their wealth. As much as they have, they're just going to want more and more and more. And so they're never just happy with what they have. They're never just content with what they have. They're never fulfilled. And so those who have wealth, if you can use that wealth in order to help others, if you can, you should use that wealth to help others. As it says here, you should give generously without being partial. Like, for example, these days, many wealthy people are doing a lot of work in order to help with the situation of the coronavirus. A lot of countries, as countries themselves, as well as a lot of rich individuals, are spending quite a lot of their wealth in order to try to help in some way about this coronavirus pandemic. And so, that's a type of giving generously without partiality. It's somehow helpful for everyone. And so, we should really be thankful to those people, to those countries and those individuals who are using their wealth in such ways. And so, but then also, people without any wealth, they also have it difficult. And then people who do have their wealth, if they just sit around, holding onto that wealth and not using it for anything good, then they're just working hard really with not much benefit. It's not really useful to work so hard. And so then it says those who have power, it says act sinfully. So they will get into, they will engage in negative actions because of that power. And so, people who have power, people who have wealth, they're not really that happy. Most of us, we think that, if I had power and I had wealth, that would be like the happiest. That would be a really happy place. But it's not necessarily the case. And then there are people who don't have that power and who don't have that wealth and feel unhappy, or they have suffering because they don't have that, because they wish for that and they don't have it. But, our normal way of thinking is that, once you have it, then you're going to be really happy. Once you get that happiness, or once you get that power, or once you get that wealth, then you're going to, have that. And so then it says, those with rank and riches are never happy and at ease. But that's what we think. We think once you have wealth and power, you're going to be happy. But think about like the American president, Trump. We would think that he should be, the most happy person in the world. He's got the power, he's got the wealth, but he's got the biggest problems, really. It's all falling upon him right now, right? He's got the biggest problems. And so, if you can, if you want happiness, you have to find that happiness from within your mind. And that's the most important thing. Because if you're not able to find happiness within your mind, then even if you're in a magnificent, limitless palace, then you can be sitting around, in a state of, poverty or suffering. And so then, just because you're wealthy or powerful does not ensure that you'll be wealthy. And that's why that happiness needs to be sought from within. Les?
알았다. 아니 강들이 양스다 양 디닝아서 아니 다 나서 치미게 열라 스타 니마께는 알아도 로고라 다 로이게 니모텔라 아니 다 노르카세 여장다 아니 노르카세 여장 되니 디니모 되니 거서 콜로야 민도와 급급하게 콜로야 말이 너나 되니 되게 니모 아니 다 노르키 로사지아 민도 아니 왕여 시사야 민도 아니 다 가르세 갑데 제사양 요 말에 다디 갑서더니 다 가란 쪽에 르당 아니 다 가란 쪽마 셈니데야 카제제제네 아니 찍고 되니 좀에 아니 로그바 다디 갑서 다 찍어서 펜토 다 토야스는 다다 로데서 담비 추마도 되니 다 게와도 빅반이데 다 냐라랑게 지트라 용데 거래 다 디카우서 펜토네 게와레 아니 너쟁에데 디과레 예텐테니 게와데 다다라니 가란토 드롭 쳇토 마르나 데두야 예르지미도와 되니 예르지 요 마레 되니야 플란렌제 요 마레 되니야 데두 값서 다 그거는 치차도와 되네 sonda 되네 디 영마라면 디마 참을 줘다 지미 열에 예피 용왕이 있어라 어디 추를 추이 되려와 영마라면 디마 참아 줘서 아니 양 예식이 나도 영마라면 담주를 못세 생이 들지도 너나 둘다 다다 추지 되려와 세다 다다라는데 라왕 옆에 값서스 아니 개와 드롭 mege pang ene chimigi jakche deso tada rang so rang ta madro pa yina ene jema tene yang kale khako chagre so pe da ya 당에 마음바 지 삼었다나 치다 되는 남용 참에 비 도좀 트라드 지시 등으로 와서 얘네 다 두스체 될죠 다다 라나티니 지금 배서지에서.
So in the next world, there are neither family nor friends. People of Dingri, place your confidence in the Dharma. If you wander in distraction, you'll waste the freedoms and advantages of human life. People of Dingri, make a resolute decision now. While you're busy being distracted, the demon of death will catch you. People of Dingri, practice from this very moment onwards. And so at some point, we're going to have to die. We're going to have to move on to that next world. And whenever we do move on to that world, then there's, however much wealth we have amassed in that lifetime, we can't take any of it with us. However much power we have at that time, there's no one who we can express that power to, or no one we can hold that power over. There's no one who we can challenge or face with that power. There's no wealth that we can take with us. Our body and mind will become separated, and we have to go alone without any friends or helpers into that death, leaving our body. And so at that point, the only thing that will help us, the thing that we should be placing our minds in or placing our trust in, is into the Holy Dharma. And so it is our virtues and non-virtues, our virtues and vices, that will carry on with us and determine our future existence. And so we need to place our attention to the Dharma now to prepare for that. And so what we, the things that will help us are those virtues. The things that will harm us are those non-virtues. And so now, while we have the opportunity, then we need to accomplish as much virtue as possible and abandon as much non-virtue as possible, because at the time of death, there's no one from whom we could borrow more virtue. There's no one we can take a loan from. We even if we need more of something, we can't get it. There's nothing for us to do. And so now, while we have the power, while we have the freedoms and advantages, then we need to work, we need to accomplish those virtues and practice those dharmas to prepare for the time of death. And so later, there won't be any chance for us to do it. So if we're thinking that I'm going to, practice later, like it says here, wandering the distraction, you'll waste those things. If you're busy with distraction, the demon of death will catch you. So if we keep thinking, I'll practice later, I'll practice in the future, then the demon of death will catch up with us. And that means that we will die unexpectedly. The death will come without any certainty as to when it will come. And so we have to practice now with diligence. Lesser. Rela sumchubade.
Kibdadin Namyon Chame Ben Gotham Tragedy, Tingrawa, Shiwi Nampa, Sujama, Rango, Rangaton, Tingrawa, Chavarasam, Chichan Gobami, Yela, Chamber Chichi, Tingrawa, no good to so. Niman no kid to so chicken, then Chibda Hinge Mother to Solo, to a top lower Chichi, Tingrawa, Meto, Naso Lake, Chusokam, Lulan, Lotte Meto, Tingrawa. Any Sunbit to Lion Lut and the Shivit and Duju Marvin Jimmy Lunden Low, Tingrawa, Tsundun Rombo, Tsunzin Nangba, Nangbachi, Georgia Porting is of Tingrawa, Jimmy Toyo, Chichang Jering a bit ember Tata Drehe, Tingrawa, that to so time you two, that's Hamatanga and that Namchi Chameva. Any touch with Jen about but that's all that I got to Metapa. Did none that's all that I got to any Chiva. Okay, any Madapi call it that get them getting the Russian any song of your race.
When will the demon of death appear? There's no easy way to tell. People of Dingri, right now, be always on your guard. The day you die, there's no one who will protect you. People of Dingri, be ready to have yourselves alone to count on. If you reflect on death, there's nothing you will need. People of Dingri, always keep your death in mind. Like lengthening shadows as the sun sinks low, the demon of death relentlessly draws nearer. People of Dingri, quickly get away from him. The morning's ravishing flower will wither by nightfall. People of Dingri, don't put your hopes in your body. Even if resembling while alive the children of the gods, once dead, they are more frightful than a demon horde. People of Dingri, you've been deceived by these illusory bodies. Visitors to a market day, their trading finished, on the morrow have dispersed. People of Dingri, your friends will part from you, be certain. Since the scarecrow conjured up by magic is sure to tumble down, people of Dingri, act now according to the linking of effect with cause. And so what all of these are discussing are how death is uncertain. The conditions of our death are uncertain. And all of this is discussing impermanence. And within the contemplations of impermanence, specifically talking about the impermanence of our death and the impermanence of the time of our death. Let's.
So that Kitang Chiwan Namyola Chayo Mari Sungwa. Kitang Chiwan Namyola Chayo Marilla. La Gordo, the Ting Sangla. Da Karasa Gorgo. Any da Mar Choma Yumba Tendegita, Neda, Nasa the Soge. Any that Kadu, Ned Kadu Poyo. Any social Kadu that David Young never midoas. There, the Nitang around Zogopena any young, that you don't say your any Matsupenata. Other low chunchoy or other Tata Shigamare and I was some low chuncho so chick any take a danger what you cheer the young other name samba any those kitchen young Tata Shigamare samba drops. Oh, that's something that data which is some go your day that any 다 가시 빼도 주세요. 애니 가서 찌마 타고 그때 아마 뭐 싫어고요. 어떤 때나 영가서 그 애니 로 충청 때야 때는 뭐 싫어고요. 왜나 등상 그때는 때라지 당 그때는 나서더니 다 지단계 얘네 당하는 저 등상계 나서도 속에다 로 충화돼서 더니 당다 내매도 서 타고도 서도 왔대 얘네 대야 레면도 왔다 가사칼에 지 랍데도 가서 가시더니 뉴년들이 로 충격때 돼서 뭐 싫어도 와 너르드나 얘네 당가서 애니 가듯이 애니 가발라시 간레지시 다다 가서 시에토야지 애니 수치를 다 딩서도 요 말에 가서는 원시에 요 말에 야나 가서는 종알라 라마 토비요 말에 대때 얘네 대외 다다다 가서 빼는 집이 값을 다 담비기 추제다 마도다 게댕이게 다 팬다 너 대마도 견라 용음도 대때 다다 니도 되네 개와테 다랑게 아니 강 dumrup 제제니 아니 제한테 개체 무시라레도스.
And so what's being discussed here is how when death will come, the time the death will come is uncertain. And so particularly these days, there are so many, unprecedented illnesses in the world, so many illnesses that have never happened in the world before. And so we have no idea, who will be, who will get that illness, when they'll get the illness, who will die from that illness, when they'll get that illness, and so forth. We really don't know, do we? And so lots of people, they just have this kind of sense of confidence. Oh, I'm young, it won't hurt me, I'll be fine. I won't die, it'll be fine. Other people think, oh, I'm healthy, I don't have any other illness, so I'll be fine. And so they place their hopes in that, or they have some confidence about that. And so, but if we really think about it, there are a lot of, people who are born right after or die right after they're born. There are a lot of people who die, when they're quite young. And these days, we even thought with the coronavirus in the beginning, lots of people were saying, oh, young people won't really be affected. They'll just get better. But a lot of them are dying now, aren't they? And so we have no certainty about any of that. We have no idea when we'll die. We have no idea where we'll die or why we will die. And so we have absolutely no certainty about any of that. And we, because we have not attained any control or any power over the process of birth and death, then we have to place our hopes in the holy Dharma. When it comes to the time of death, that's the only thing we can rely upon is our virtues and non-virtues that we've accumulated. So the benefits of the virtues and the harms of the non-virtues are what is going to affect our future. And so now, while we have the opportunity, it's very, very important that we immediately make efforts at developing those virtuous practices of this holy Dharma. Thus serves.
Oh yes. 다야 대대다 아니 와서 남신의 양 아니 다 르당 르데 토요일로 제제네 아니 젤로 제다 아니 샘데 다 작어로 제는 폴로 그랬습니다. 어라 아니 다 강한들 양들이 지 르당 샘인데 되니 남식 되니 저지 임바 어따때 가서 땡케처와 대대 되니 다다 니도 되니 땅가랑 저거지 랑게 샘텔라 되니 랑 토바시 제제니 아니 냠설해야 돼 땅가랑 배치 모래 송이 가래래 아니 주밀린데 지장 저ring에비 때문에 다다 되게 그래도
Really?
그래도 다다 되게 들어와 샘지 샤고 지장 폴미 나무 다다 쳐지 들어와서.
And so, since the scarecrow conjured by magic is sure to tumble down, people of Dingri, act now according to the linking of effect with cause. For sure, the vulture of your mind will one day fly away. People of Dingri, now is the time to soar up to the heights. And so, our body, which is like a scarecrow, is certain to to crumble down, and our mind is certain to fly up like a bird. And so that what that means is that our body and mind will become separated at the time of our death. And so that is for certain, right? We are certain of that. And so now we need to attain that mastery of our mind. We need to attain that freedom or that power over our mind in our practice, and that's the important thing. Let's.
알았어. 다디 말한 쪽에 이니 르 다다다 르 대보인데 아니 다 말한 쪽 이니 제다다 말한도 다 담줄 다와지 저와지서 다 가들이 송여와 다 담줄 쪽에다 된 멜로디 되니 가서 가이쳐 보시오지래 다 디게 토니 아니 다 대저 야고지 땅 톰나 이니 다당아란조 이니 세직 르지게 아니 상제적 고방 투야지 고갑대 다 다대들 이니 야버래 이니 손자들 다 대다고 르데 아리 ছাতি 녀바대양 이니 가란조 배저 야고지 땅제니 이니 답에 이니 랑당 yen simjen tam jela ta jinga zo ene pemba ji drop ane la guardo en rangye niga to drop tongeng ge te da chebar je zo bejo tang je de ne ngara zo cho sa drba jang ene de na yin ge da tare ge lutela da rang la mahli ba je da rang la machar ba ji And
so now we have this, comfortable position in our bodies. We have this body, which is the precious human birth, the precious human body with its 18 freedoms and advantages, the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages. And so that's extremely important that we have that. And if we're able to use that body properly, then we have an opportunity now with this precious human body to be able to attain the state of Buddhahood in just this very lifetime, within this very body. And so having attained this body this one time, if we're able to put that into practice, then able to use that well, then we should use that in order to bring benefit both to ourselves and others, to all living beings. And particularly with this body, which is the support for being able to help ourselves and others, then we should use that in order to gather the accumulations, purify our obscurations. And then, so we shouldn't deceive ourselves. We shouldn't be mistaken, and we should accomplish this such that we are able to die without regrets. And that's important, to reach the moment of death without regretting your life, or without regrets. Let's.
Yeah. Any that any redox simke trinke pamala shamta ninge gompi tingrawas ta ngaranze to ta any tipa chembok any ta chötamje tsawa dawote ta tamboni ni chi any jamba ta ninge sing kachembol ta tela simje devala devata dembala samjecheni eni devata mumdervan dobi shambache ani ya simje dongarje te solo mecheni eni dongartang chandola eni ninge sego 너나 되는 가도 다 잠바다 ninge 생인데 다 장첩제 셈고미야라 되는 메나 탑 메버레 너네다 말한 속에 산지적 공방제 로고에나 산지의 쭉 가르래 셀라고도와 맞아 산지적 공방으로 저대 가르래 아니 저대다 아니 장첩지 생겨서 다 장첩지 생기 저대 가르래 세나 되네 샴바다 닝게고 닝게래서 와 잠바다 닝게 어라서 다 샴다 닝게 검사데 다 소리세나 되네 리로기 심제도 차고도 되네서 조제라 되네 리로기 심제도 담지 제르가라 쪽에 애니 가든 첨보 이바 마세 무슨 되네 가라 쪽다 애니 어다 니kabla ngazo pena phama ye ta ka khatang hiabana ye ma shi train ane phama ji samjo ge ne ka ring chembo yimba ma che tha do shang chob ro bar che ba la ta pena ring ro ge sim je de so tam ji nga so ka ring chembo re do ha.
And so then all the beings of the six realms have cared for you as parents. People of Dingri, towards them, cultivate your love and compassion. And so in the Mahayana then, the real root of that Mahayana Dharma comes down to love and compassion. And so that love is that wish for beings to be endowed with happiness, for beings to have happiness and not be separated from that. And then compassion is to wish for them to be freed from suffering. So observing beings suffering and wishing them to be freed from that suffering. And so that's love and compassion. And to practice this path of the Bodhisattva, to generate bodhicitta, then these are indispensable qualities. And so if we want to attain the state of Buddhahood, then what is the cause for that attainment? And so the cause for that is bodhicitta. And what is the cause of bodhicitta? That is love and compassion. And so those beings to whom we can develop, or for whom we can develop love and compassion, are all of the beings of the six realms. So just as I was, so from one perspective, as I was talking about yesterday, when we talk about, the sentient beings, how we have this debt of gratitude to them. From one side, we have a debt of gratitude for them because in the more immediate sense, or more kind of worldly sense, then they have all been our parents, like we were talking about before. So we have to recognize them as being our mothers, remember their kindness, and wish to repay their kindness, and so forth. And then from another side, also, we owe them this debt of gratitude because, ultimately speaking, in order for us to attain the state of Buddhahood, then also these sentient beings are extremely important as an object of our practice. Thus.
That's right. Da yang any da 장첩지 샘 되기 때문에 가서 다 곰사게 열라고때 대자고요. 다 아니 너나 열때 다 샘제 탐지 너나 당아도 장접수 용어때 예배를 예배지 어느 때는 열때 이니 답에 리메바 초다 리스마제베 너나 때니 심지어 탐제라 메고고요 봐 대대변에 다 추리jenje 되니 제가 아니 잠바다 추리jenje 닝게라서 봤다고서 탐제 애니 잠바래 되고 닝게래 되고 근데 다 대탐제 애니 말아서 양 창벌니 봐서 다 그래서 창립이 근데 대탐제 창빈이 다 창빈이gel로 빼는 땅 하나 저 애니 도시 다 빼는 강자 찍을 곰이야 봐야 빼는 땅 아주 조리jen세나 나랑게 조라고 파만라고 다 대답을 잠바다 닝기 제바이나 대야 팬도 말어 배 팬도 침보요래 배 차이나 되는 나랑 저 군사람이 샤론을 되죠라 아마 부모님들 최 콜로도 값서 네 부모게 아마라 아니 다 잠바 가서 닝게 제제네 다 나랑 신어야 체매 다 아마도 마셔로 제는서는 아마라 삼었다 아메게 다 나다 신었다 로침보인 다 나셔 다 부모들 때는지 마셔로 제는서는 코로니 찌기찌를 도스 제는더니 삼로 땅 인도더니 천만은 니가 신도들 되니 야 애니 가르쳐 거고 라요라 계속 뭐 따버려 두스제네 다 대다고 대다탐 제스 아니 다 아니 기타가 샴바다 닝게 아니 다 요 직대 요르다 요 아니 조리제 따고지라 몸바이나 패도 요래 잠바된 게 생기네 설레잖아요 이나야 다 문이 장축지 샘 곰베그 요르테 샘게 탐지를 메고요 대때다 토마니는 아주 세메 비어서도 값어야 악용 세메 생각도 용도와 다 몸도 그 값을 때니 열 때는 조림해 봐 너나 때니 샘게 탐지라 네 드라 년 파르마 너나 다 대탐지라 이해하면 봐 너나 샘게 탐지 산지적 공방 그거도 로치 다 고고요 다 대답하게 얘네 심지어 탐지라 요 심지어 탐지라 미과 대양 다 니가 그게 동하랬다 니가 그게 되는 말은 좀마 메데와 사바좀 많이 봐 타도가 얘네 심지어 탐지 때도 내가 조비 산지지 관한 롬보치지 토바시 제고도 삼바데 다 장점이 심지 되니 뭐라고 그래야 되게요.
And so these are then therefore the kind of objects of our meditation of bodhicitta. And so that is, all sentient beings. And so the essence of bodhicitta is an altruistic attitude. And that altruistic attitude towards all beings should be unbiased. It shouldn't be bound by, any kind of restrictions or boundaries. It should, and so it should be, in reference to, or it should have that aspiration for all sentient beings. It should be focused upon all sentient beings. But biased love and biased compassion and so forth, they are still love and compassion, and they're still beneficial and they're still good. When we talk about the four immeasurable thoughts or the four boundless thoughts, if those are not boundless, but they're still those four thoughts of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, then they're called the four Brahma abodes, and they're still beneficial and they're still good practices. And so, for example, in the words of my perfect teacher, there's the story of the daughter and the mother who are carried away in the water, and the mother wants to save the daughter, but the daughter wants to save the mother, and the mother says, oh, it doesn't matter if I die, if I can save the mother, and the mother says, it doesn't matter if I die, I'm old, so I want to save my daughter. They both end up dying and taking rebirth into the heavenly realms. So that's like a type of an example of a biased love or biased compassion that still like brought them into this heavenly realm. And so those, even biased attitudes of love and compassion and so forth are still beneficial attitudes. They're still good. But when we're talking about bodhicitta, then it should be an unbiased love, an unbiased compassion and so forth. So, when we're practicing the four boundless qualities, then we often start with the boundless equanimity, which is one which sees all beings with an attitude of equanimity, whether they were our friends, enemies, neutral beings and so forth. We see them with no distinction between them. And so we need to generate this attitude of bodhicitta for all of those beings equally. And so that wish of bodhicitta then is the wish to take all of those beings who are the object of our meditation, and not merely to clear away or alleviate their immediate discomforts and sufferings and so forth, but to even ultimately bring them to the state of eternal or stable peace, of the state of precious Buddhahood. And so that wish is the wish of bodhicitta. Less.
다 너나 되니 다 장점지 샘대야 되니 럼발이도 다 맞지 공고 다 장점지 샘제라 빼나 아니 저보다 본적 장점지 샘다 담담 장점지 샘 넘바 니요라 вот 뭐 줘 순도 알아서 다 아니 군접 장점지 샘지 되니 다 랍자데 가르고 열서나 되니 랍자데 다 저거 셈매버 있어 아니 잠바체메 닝게체메 가바체메 아놈체메스 아니 다 말한 저거 롭중그 남비게 토니 냠네 잡아이나 다 담보 되니 요때야 땅놈니 네 셈매봐 Dorna ta shamba ta ningi gomsi yorte ene sempian tamjela ane churi mebashi oda dos jeje de guyores.
And so, in brief, then bodhicitta, when we're talking about bodhicitta and engaging in bodhicitta in stages or gradually, then we talk about primarily these two factors of conventional bodhicitta and then ultimate bodhicitta. And so the trainings in conventional bodhicitta are the trainings of the four boundless attitudes, or the four immeasurables. So those are immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. And when we're actually training in that, when we're training our minds in that, then we begin by generating that boundless equanimity towards those beings who will be the objects of our practice of boundless love and boundless compassion, so that we can develop that boundless love and compassion to all living beings without any bias. Thus.
Ta any te na yin tene ta any yang ta jukba shangchob je sem se ta kandan jukba shangchob je sem je lobjala ta so tene lam haru do chimba chok la boyores ta tigi nane tene yang haru do chimba chok nane chang tene ta misege ji ane zoba singe ta kachi mo shirare de yorwa ta changchob je sem je ta ka kadal rongete ane ta shedang de de tene 다 뒤니데 빼나 닝게 첨보 대당 셰당 첨보니데 근데 다 고니 빼도 매치로지 다 냠는 네임 더 버리도 와 대대 되네 다당 레지 코르비 천왕나 셰당 독산 방식 들어와서.
And so then within that conventional bodhicitta, we have an aspect of conventional bodhicitta, which is called the engaged bodhicitta. And so the trainings for that engaged bodhicitta are the trainings in the six perfections. And particularly amongst those trainings in the six perfections, the practice of patience is extremely important, patient forbearance, because the real contradictory, or the direct contradictory factor to that bodhicitta, to that compassion bodhicitta, is anger. And so then, that factor of patience is the forbearance. It's the undisturbed mind that doesn't get angry. So compassion and anger are like water and fire. They can't abide in the same space. And so then the text reads, hate for enemies is samsara's hallucination caused by actions. People of Dingri, transmute your hatred and your hostile mind. Bless.
And the chagali javi shedangali kichimachi any dikmachigres. Dorna tinita ngaranzoga any da kana. Then also any shedangi may be metera, that in Zaba Mavere, and it telata, Changkip the same Jag Tabio Marwa. There is on that Naranzoga any Zoba, not to penetrate over Tatanga Chamba, Ningi, Gavatanum, Sachitan, Macarse. Ore Jimba Sutam Zobat Sundry, some dancing Yorwa. That digging Nani Chang, the Ningata, Misegita, Changus, Jonjuk to Soganani, Zerbi Leote, Misegi catching Bushirat Nangri Ore. There tenta, dig Misegi Yorte, that's all the Tangaran drag the Orma. Dona Tening around to Tati, Dratus or Tamchelaya, then is some Yabo, Tangwaina. 코조 가르치는 가서라 자찬이 차급이 좀 생기요래. 아니 다 세라부 뭐만이 나쪽에 애니 양 직계나 얘네 파만라고 직계나 되네 가란 쪽 된되겠다 가딩 첨보 젠직라 징래 원절 제야버다 또게 다리겠다 밴드께서 드라침보다 차고 차대요. 근데 저 손상 아니 배차기나 되는 당하란주 아니 대라양 나무고 되니 제 주트 제지 매버지 용마 근데 sonza 대때 미설게다 그래서 담제 애니 당위게 드라트서 담제야 메스 까르니 다트서 담제 세럽 헌제 되니 파마당 양나랑게다 세와 치슈 제지 되니지 이마 애니 드레스 제네 삼로 당제 제니 미설게 되니 당아저 드라라 애니 당셈방 애니 녀라 마차바 드라라 마당바 되니 대탐제 애니 당념제 되니 셈제 담제 다 상주제 셈지 요르도 맥제제 어다 두스제제.
And so Padampa Sangye said that, you know, one moment of anger is even more harmful than 100 moments of attachment. And so a person who has anger in their mind, then they have no patient forbearance. And a person who has anger in their mind has no way to really develop bodhicitta. And so for us, that practice of patience is extremely important. And so when we're talking about these 6 perfections, the perfections of generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom, then particularly we take particularly important the practice of patience and of the teachings of Shantideva in the way of the Bodhisattva, then the chapter of the chapter of patience is especially important for us. And so when we are angry, then the object of our anger is, you know, someone that we don't like, you know, they're our enemies. And so we should really think carefully about that. Like, why did they become our enemies? Why is that the case? And so we should think that, you know, it's possible, you know, maybe that in our past life, they were one of our parents, or they were some other being who is especially kind to us, or especially, you know, someone who we were especially close to. But that through some kind of, like, you know, bad reaction to, or, you know, mistaken kind of response to their kindness, then in this lifetime, then they have, you know, been born as our enemy. And so we should really especially think about them, and really especially try to think of them as being, or as having been in our past life, someone very precious to us, like our parents or some other person who was extremely, you know, loving or caring for us, and especially focus upon them so that we can, you know, develop that mind of equality or equanimity, where we no longer see our enemies with anger, we no longer see our friends and family with desire or attachment, and so that we can have this this real mind of equality, this unbiased attitude of bodhicitta towards all living beings. Listen.
Oh yeah. 네, 다양 삼삼랑 아주 상첩 토발라 이니다 아주 이니 드라트서양 까르냐 첨보 있어다 산지 샤캬 토바게 되네 콩 랍진 배 콩나 다 까르니 체휴도 인송도 네 든 랍진 트레나데 샤캬 토바 산지 송어서 랍진 까르니 때네 랍진 로도 짱짱 샤캬 토베 텔러 조바 곤 되네 랍진 까르니 때네 샤캬 토바 때네 야 산지 소원이 소원도 아니 등산다다 되니 야거게 산지게 남털이 야고 짓더니 탑도 나타다 띵 대답 가서 인지라 조여라대
인지라 유지 말이라
여 말해
이게 주요리 세기도
네네 되니 산지게 남털 돼서 되니 제나 제나 빼 야고도다 채널에서 자막에 산지에게 되니 남들 때더니 로니에 따로지 않다 등산더니 지로는 로야매 되니 나 TV랑 때더니 tukpa 접사 되니 제 가르세고 얘네 도레니제 짱짱 때되는 아주 샘때야 마대와지 촉도도 때때더니 야 TV 따야 되냐 아니 다 니마르는 야 TV 견다 따야 그 쇼르진 산지게 되는 제남들 레오레레레 콜 레오 망보도가 어때 때는 빼야고도 나양 가자 때대 봐 때에서 때는 참아 때버인 빼야고 섭도다 돼.
And so, you know, sometimes, you know, in our practice or for the attainment of Buddhahood, then our enemies can be, you know, especially important, especially helpful for us. And so like the Buddha said many times that, his cousin Devadatta was always causing problems for him, always, having, reacting poorly to him or treating him badly and so forth. And the Buddha even said that, that his attainment of Buddhahood is due to the kindness of Devadatta. And so these days in India, they made a really long TV series, like many, many chapters, TV series of the whole life of the Buddha. And so you can see that whole story of Devadatta and the Buddha in that. And so, but anyway, it's really, really good. And Rinpoche was saying that maybe you should watch that. It has English subtitles, that you should watch it. And that, these days we can't go outside and everyone's watching a bunch of TV anyway. And if you're just sitting around watching all of this like disturbing TV of people fighting and arguing, then that's not going to make you feel good or make you feel comfortable. So maybe you can take a little bit of your TV time and maybe watch a chapter or, one episode of the Buddha's life here and there. And so Rinpoche said that he watched, this story of the Buddha's lifetime, and it's really, really well made and really well acted. It was originally in Hindi, I think so. Yeah. It's on Netflix. Oh, it's on Netflix. People here just told me it's on Netflix. Oh.
Dini ta yang karisati baba teso ina ta ngara to tesa ke amdu ke khambe ke nika dos.
And so for the Tibetans out there, this has been translated, into Central Tibetan, Kham dialect, and also Amdo dialect.
Ala so ta yang ngaranzu dini ta Tandam Changchub Sem singing de that so any that derwa any that Changchub Sem that any Tandam Changchub Sem that Jula Chegoya data as to ta Shirap Tang, then Pongani, that's all there the king. That thing me Jula Chever Chabala, any young as to Tandam Changchub Sem day. Jula Chever Chabala Tang Garchen Chishu Davote Kari Chang or Sena digged up the Chang Yore and then Jimel Magat Resore. Tandam Linji Kepi Yeshede Sodo Dripata will Laje Tang, or then Lami Chingla Konali, Tabian Mumbai by Sheperja, that Tandam Change the same day. Chever Chabala, Kariche Gore Sena, Garchen digged up Jangore. Tunjela Sony Sagore. Ene Lakbardo, then a Tandam Change of the same day, Gombe top town. Ene Tedravet in the tongue around Zogopena, Lamek, any Chinglap, Julie Joqualatinitini, Nasugu Jula Che Gogre Mato, then a day young around Zogopena, any chick. Pecha draw chick with Teba draw down, Tat, the dig chick, the name around Sochi. Dawoche Tanga Sapa Dawada, the Digi Yongo Mare. There they thought Tandam Shanju just some Jula Jebber. Any that tango Garchen digged up Jamajilla, that digged up till a mango yorwa, digged up singing till a mango chol. There they thought till a le, yinsom de tipa, the dish. There they thought in a young digged up giant, get top chick carrier sena, chatter kobe, lucid digged up da. Jikten Chava Punche, Tingrava, Dejo Chamdong, Dikwa, Tamar Lontam, Malap Tingrava, Mugu Domi Yija, Dikwa, Lama Chur Korche, Tingrava.
And so then the other side of bodhicitta is what we call ultimate bodhicitta. And so then what that refers to then primarily is this aspect of wisdom and emptiness. So in order to develop that in our mind streams, then the main obstacle to that, or the main contrary factor to that, is our negative actions, our misdeeds, and our obscurations. And so Jigme Lingpa, Rigzen Jigme Lingpa, he said that in order to in order to develop the co-emergent timeless awareness, then you have to gather the accumulations, purify your obscurations. Togen
let me ching up Konali.
Onale Tapshin Momba Tapshin
So
Temba Momba.
let me ching up Konali, Tabian, Momba Yimba Shipper Jazz.
And so then in order to develop Momba, so in order to develop the co-emergent timeless awareness, then you must follow after this practice of purifying your obscurations, gathering the accumulations, and receiving the blessings of a realized Lama. And so any other method you should know to be ignorant. And so then this, what we have to do then is we have to eliminate those obstructing factors, which are our misdeeds and our obscurations. So we need to purify those things. Then we need to gather all those conducive factors, which is the two accumulations. So we need to gather the accumulations. And then in addition to that, we need to practice meditation, and we need to receive, in our mind streams, we need to receive the transmission of the blessings of our Lama. And so that is the way that we can develop this ultimate bodhicitta. And otherwise, just sitting around reading texts or just sitting around reciting rituals and counting off numbers of mantras and so forth, merely that alone is not going to do it. And so we have so many kinds of misdeeds and obscurations within us. And so we have misdeeds and obscurations of body, speech, and mind. And so then some methods are given here in the text as we come for purifying the obscurations of body, speech, and so forth. So it says then with verse 41, prostration and circumambulation purify obscurations of the body. People of Tingri, abandon your worldly physical work. Recitation and taking refuge purify obscurations of speech. People of Tingri, abandon all your ordinary conversation. Fervent devotion purifies habitual tendencies of the mind. People of Tingri, meditate on the teacher above your head. Lesson.
So this song, that to legit dikwa se ta kanda tene legit dikwa se de ta karere. Penangaran to ene sojo ba kuma ko ene tena yin ene ta doba lobar yamba. Tena yi ta nga ge dun chama tsop. Ene yege napsen no sen lokala supati dikwa da tele tene nga to ta te ta bo ge tene ya go somje tene nga to any dikwa tege ya ta go na ya logic gawa tene nga ran to ta tele dobe ene ta nga to karasa yenje so joba jimba tonwa ene ta tena yege ta domba neba ene tena yege ta nga ga changor joba ene komba domba ene tena yege ta yege chi ene goni ta chi chamba ene ninge la sopam dona ta to chene tene tele ta so ta mgewa tamje pang ene go somje gewa to so tamje ta ene druate ta changchob ji sem gyula cheba cheba ta tapshi ene medum ron res.
And so then our misdeeds of body are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Of speech, we have lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and so forth. In our mind, we have harmful intent, covetousness, wrong view. And so then we have all of these misdeeds of our three gates, or our three avenues of being. And so in order to purify those, we need to work with their contraries. We need to develop the virtues in terms of, protecting life, giving generously, remaining within our discipline, speaking honestly, resolving differences between people, bringing people together, developing those attitudes in your mind of love, compassion, and so forth. So primarily what we're trying to do is to abandon the negative actions and then accomplish all of those virtues with our body, speech, and mind. And that is an indispensable method for developing bodhicitta within your mind stream. That's
yang te che ko was ene ta nyamlen che go nga zu dada pa do kamsum je khoal khare chen ne ta nga zu zo dada 마릭 박 jen ten jen ni tene nga zo ma any trouble cham khoal cham tene trouble khol to course 다 마릭 박 tele do gona tene nga ran zo ya any shirb go do wa tene nga zo 투섬 곰섬 제고요 투섬 곰섬 제고고요나 tene ta ya 대답을 제사라 tene give 신년 고고요 올라서 근데 손다 근데 다 가서 양 개비신이 땜바테 다 가서 개침 보지래도 와 근데 손다 근데 라마 쭈르 코르히 있다 대대 땅가란 속고 빼나 애니 개비신이 땜바테 애니 다 가서 상쪽 람라 칭해 그 빼나 다람 롬보 람주 맹해지 요나 다 tel라 람식 되는지 내현야 보지 랍 송거이나 되네 람나 파르체 메번 로토바나이 되네 양 기enya 땜바테야 개치고 차기요레스.
And so then in particular, for us to develop this ultimate bodhicitta, in order for that to develop in our minds, then we need to actually practice. And so why is it that up to now we have been wandering in these three realms of samsara? And so it's because of our ignorance. And so because of our ignorance, we're living in this cycle of delusion. We're turning in this machination or the cycle of delusion. And so if we want to oppose or eliminate that ignorance, then we need to develop the discriminating intelligence or that wisdom. And so what we need then is the wisdoms or the discriminating intelligence, the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. And so if we need that, then we need to seek out the source of that, which is the spiritual teacher. So we need to find our teacher, our master. And so then just like, they're the person who's going to be our guide to lead us on this path to enlightenment. So just like if a person who doesn't know their way around, an area, if they want to get where they want to go, then they need a guide who has a good knowledge of all the aspects of how to get them where they need to go. And if they have that guide, then they can make it to their destination safely. And so therefore, relying upon the spiritual teacher is so important. And that's why it says here, people of Dingri, meditate on the teacher above your head. Listen.
다티 양에 다다텔라 직 쉐절들 내려서래 다 가장 그때 가서 또다 팀몽게다 택마르오치 토린 로요르와 다마예 다 드랭게도 쪼다 택바 쳔몰라 다다도서 다 쪼 택바 쳔모 애니 대나네 다 미세게 다 장점 지선는 로데 월 대양 코는 쳔거지래 등에 삽제로 오지마 같은지 원래 제 야거든요. 봐서는 제사야. 그래서 되네 다 내제 집에 샤다를 봐. 셀라 따버만지 들어봐. 다 대양 내네 다다 철도 되는 냠내 거 속고야 되신 거래서. 되네 여제 담바 뉴미 땡여서 대라 포족매도 들어봐. 다 대라 되는 아주 가르쳐 거르서나 다 미설게 쌈땡다.
And so then there's one thing that I forgot to mention is that yesterday we were talking about what I was calling the common paths of practice, which were our foundational teachings, and now we've moved into the Mahayana practices, so specifically into those practices of bodhicitta. And I think you probably understand that, but yesterday I started off with giving you an outline of the way that this was going to progress, and then I didn't mention where we reached in the outline today. And so now the next verse reads, your flesh and bones took form together, but in the end are sure to separate. People of Dingri, do not believe that you'll live forever. And so this is talking about how important it is for us to begin our practice immediately, to do it now, here and now. And so then the next verse reads on, capture that most sublime of countries, the constant land of the natural state, people of Dingri, where there is no transition or change. And so this is particularly an encouragement for us to develop those qualities of meditative concentration and samadhi. Listen.
노르드 담바 샘닉 때첸창 데라 제바 메도 들어왔습니다. 강대에다 장접제 샘생이디 다 조딩하란즈 다 샘을 샘 아니 샘데라 되니 가란조 베 다당가란조 애니 조다 애니 장접제 샘제도 다 옌팽게 샘지 다 네 되니 베 당가란조 사 치슈라고지 당가란조 자와 탐제제 나니 얘네 당가조 샘 상보데 개심보래 다 장접제 샘생인데 샘 상보제래 데라양 아니 베다 아니 샘제 타당 세메바 다부지를 매과 인상 얘네 되게 다지 소남당 평양대양 세메바지 여버래 당가란조 샘데 당가조 아니 랑게 샘데 랑게더니 줄고고요래 다 줄버 제발라 되니 세제 담바 띵징 롬 좁죠 집에 동하면도 들어와 되니 다 샘데라 롬마겐도 가레스 쥐고고서는 되니 다베 아니 쌈데스 다 쌈데지 바로 좀 마세 다 띵인데서는 쌈데스는 지바래 되니 샘데 다 띵인쟁이라 아니 랍고요래서.
And so when we're talking about bodhicitta, we're talking about a mind. And so that mind of bodhicitta is the mind of altruism, the mind of wishing to benefit others. And that is the most precious of minds. And amongst all things that one could do, the most important or the most wholesome thing that one could do is to develop that mind. And so that mind of bodhicitta, that altruistic mind of bodhicitta, is a boundless mind. And it's boundless because the objects that it's focused upon, all beings, are boundless, are limitless. And also the benefits and the merits of developing that mind are boundless or limitless. And so this is something that you need to, work your mind into, or develop your mind into that mind of bodhicitta, transform your mind or correct your mind, bring your mind into that state. And so now, enjoy that most sublime of riches, the treasure of the nature of mind, people of Dingri, which can never be depleted. Savor that most sublime of foods, the exquisite taste of meditation, people of Dingri, which abolishes the pangs of hunger. And so then this is, in order to savor that most sublime foods, the exquisite taste of meditation, then we need to develop that meditative concentration, the perfection of concentration, which is synonymous with saying samadhi or meditative concentration. So we need to train in that or develop that. Listen.
냠내나 마 저리온도 값어 이 등상가란 쪽에 다 가르쳐 샤마타 그봐 아니 희네다 놀라다 샘 희네다 라동스 다 샘되니 다 돈담 장주 샘도 다 싫었지 근데 다 가서 바로 듣지 말라 보러 와 싫을 바로 듣지 말라 다 뭐도 가래로 보고 요랬으나 다 당공가란 쪽에 샘디마 아니 다 띵인생 제기발라 하고 아니 신이 랍도 뎀베 라통기 되니 녀무 다는 말 되니 점버체그레 송기는 장주스 저주노라 송여러 와스.
And so then when we're talking about that perfection of concentration or samadhi, when we're talking about that in terms of, or in application to our own practice, that's mainly talking about, first off, the practice of shamatha, or calm abiding practice. And so, but when we're talking about ultimate bodhicitta, we're talking about the perfection of wisdom, right? But before we can develop that perfection of wisdom, what we need to do is to develop that single pointed meditative concentration of shamatha. And so as it said in the Bodhicharyavatara, you know that the mind, which the vipassana, which is thoroughly imbued with vipassana, or the vipassana, which is thoroughly imbued with shamatha, will be able to overcome or to destroy all of the afflictive mental states. And so first we need to develop that quality of calm abiding or shamatha. Let's.
Tene yang komje tamba tembi duzo tongtela gyunche me do tingraba. Da te yang ngana zoga semde shinila labgo batang machepe tene tela temba tang shijinji go ni tene chinga zo yang ne yang de tene nyamsa lan go ya. Da changju sibi gyonjo na la yang temba tang shijingi tene mixe ge leo yorwa.
And so then as it says, enjoy the most, imbibe that most sublime of drinks, the ambrosia of mindfulness, people of Dingri, whose flow is never interrupted. And so we need to not only train in that practice of calm abiding or shamatha, but we need to rely upon the qualities of introspection and mindfulness, and to again and again maintain that practice. And so even in the Bodhicharyavatara, or the way of the Bodhisattva, there's a specific chapter dedicated to these qualities of mindfulness and introspection. Let's.
Yes. Then I to counter yang then I to sembate any ta yang the sembate ya any zang tango do as. Then I to Padampa Sangye the so those can be then Yamne the cups the legal logic do. Any sembang bachi trail the do nagochi ya. Yang jamba dan hinja dan yang tidak dapat itu kalau je ya, ini tu sekitar tampu nak yang siapa, ini pasal ini tes sekitar ini kalau dan aku ini tu manyu cipan, ini tamat ini ngaran sopan kalau mato, ini naku meba caro so, ini sedoa gift bank, oh tidak jauh je ini ngaran so jamba sih sengit ini kaising boleh do. Tende soda ta December ene ngato ta kandra semba ya gyugo ro ta semba ge gyonde so ton tipa genyon la ta yode de so ya jamang la ta semde jeden de ta semde ba ta ngara so ge jelo de ta semde jenjam so ta semde jebzang de ta to ba ina ta tonda do de do.
And so what we're trying to do then is to make our mind more and more wholesome. And so there's the story of some of these Kadampa Geshes in the past. So when they were practicing, this one Kadampa Geshe, every time he would have a bad thought or a negative thought, he would set aside one black stone. And every time he would have a wholesome thought, a good thought of love, compassion, faith, devotion, and so forth, then he'd put up a white stone. And so when he first started, paying attention and doing this practice, it was like all black stones. And then at a certain point through maintaining that practice, it became a point where it was, an equal number of black and white stones. And then ultimately, like continuing with the practice, it got to the point where he had only white stones and no black stones at all. And so that's why these practices of mindfulness and, introspection are so important. And so we're trying to transform our mind. And when we say like transform or correct, to fix our mind, it means that we're trying to take all of the faulty aspects of our mind and try and make them lesser and lesser. And we're trying to make all of the qualities in our mind greater and greater. We're trying to make our mind more and more stable, more and more relaxed, more and more gentle. And so that's the point. That's what we're trying to do. Lesser.
다 티닝아란 저 조지 담바 용시 철 대란 넘들매도 등러봐 다 나저 시럽지 바로 듣지 마 시에도 다 시럽지 바로 듣지 마다 대라 시럽지 바로 듣지 마 세대가 값서 되네 다 나저 조다다 아니 다 라퉁 담에 또 시럽대 다 때랑가랑 소페나다 다 nga랑 쪽에 철빛 잡았디 애니 당증을 통비도 다 nga저 당증게 애니 잡았죠 버제발라 디네 다 nga저베 애니 시럽도 땡고 다 때라 퇴비 시럽 삼비 시럽 애니 곰비 시럽 다 때려서는 퇴섬 곰섬 따곰 쪄섬 생인데 다 뒤식 돌았더니 다 좀 다 나즈베 아니 퇴성고도 싫었던 거랬어.
Rely upon that most sublime companion, primordial awareness wisdom, people of Dingri, from which you can never be parted. So here we're talking about the perfection of wisdom of the 6 paramitas. And so primarily this is discussing that aspect of vipassana. And that vipassana is the vipassana, or the special insight into or the wisdom that realizes the lack of self, or the selflessness. And so the root of our delusion is the grasping at the self. And so if we want to cut through the root of that self-grasping, then we need to generate that wisdom. And we generate that by way of hearing, contemplation, and meditation, and through understanding those presentations of view, meditation, and conduct, but primarily through the practices of, or by developing the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. Thus.
아, 디닝 아주 세지 담발 리피 최종 소를 대라 젠체메도 등러와 똥뱅아나 리핀동 꼬르지 따와 토다메도 등러와 스타 아 디조고 디닝 아주 따파 에니 던담 장주지 셈라 디니 다가로 주변에다 던담 장주지 셈로와 던담 장주지 셈 디니 송고요레스.
And so then seek that most sublime of progeny, the young child of pure awareness, people of Dingri, for which there is no birth or death. In the state of emptiness, whirl the spear of pure awareness, people of Dingri. The view is free of being caught by anything at all. In a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher, people of Dingri. The meditation is free of any torpor or excitement. So here, once again, we're continuing the discussion about that ultimate bodhicitta.
다 됐다고 되네. 다 말이 빈냐 뭐라. 되네. 다 리피시 제고고요. 되네. 다 되게 애니 리피시티 되네. 다 가서 가르서 애니 다 노르나 되네. 추탐 제라 되네. 다 가서 애니 가르서 거라. 애니 랑징라 다신 제제제네. 애니 다 노르나 되네. 가서 애니 최탐제 여바당 매바당 니가당 니가 마인베 되네 니게 가르세 니가 마인발라서 간도나 되네 타비야 주바당 자와 대라 되네 당가는 저거 빼나 아니 원막 아니 따왔어 그 여러와 다 대라 빼네 아니 타블 우마 쳔보서 타탐제다 자와 다 대라지 토타 매바 나와라 토타 매바라와 여 이메나서 건도나더니 집에 타담제당 자와데 어다 때더니 아주 따와지.
And so the antidote to our unawareness or ignorance is the awareness of primordial wisdom, or of timeless awareness. And so what that is in brief is the knowledge of the nature of all phenomena. So we get to that by examining the nature of all phenomena and seeing that it is beyond all of the conceptual extremes of existing, non-existing, both existing and non-existing, and neither existing nor non-existing. And so what we call that is the freedom from the extremes, the freedom from the 4 conceptual extremes. And that is what's referred to as the view of the middle way, and sometimes called the great middle way, which is free from all extremes. And so it is free from any of these conceptual elaborations of beginning, end, of existence, non-existence, being something or not being something else. It's free from all conceptual elaborations of whatsoever. That's
재미 땡도 영매 자라통 고나 증거 매도 등러와스. 다 디당하는 저거다 애니 당하는 저 배나 애니 라통 얘네 다 애니 가서 냠내들 와 라통 냠내 너나 당가서 따와 때나 팝니더니 다 애니 라통 다음에 또 보이더니 시럽대 다 담고 따와 때나 팝 얘네 고바게 돌다 신고 매비게 돌아서 다 심마 목과 타발라 속과 놀라더니 신고가 쫀다 자리게 고니 얘네 양내 양도 봉고도 산지 샤자 도바양 되는 가서 냠바를 다양 가르세 냠발 야과 생이지 양 냠야래야 잉바 생이지 도와 변에 당가도 싫어 바로 싫음이 뭐나 연방가는 산이 띵인데는 요바를 욕소사 다 너는 다 띵인데 라더니 가서 다 공부를 했어 앞쪽 맞게 앞쪽
They done something. In a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher. Vela. In a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher. People of Dingri, the meditation is free of any torpor or excitement. And so when we're practicing vipassana, the special insight or superior insight, then our view is the view of that wisdom which realizes selflessness. So first we have to establish that view. And once we have established that view, then we need to put that in practice in meditation without any of these faults, meditative faults, which general meditative faults are referred to as torpor and excitement. So not feeling sleepy, not feeling mentally agitated, and so forth. And so then we need to meditate again and again in a state that's free from these faults of meditation. And so what's that referred to and then is meditative equipoise. And so like it said in the Heart Sutra that the Buddha then placed himself into or rested into that state of meditative equipoise. And so when we are practicing then this practice of vipassana, then we need to practice in the state of meditative equipoise, which means we need to have the state of meditative concentration or samadhi. Let's
yes. 다 내가 저양 다다 다 까마파 랑종도 이어라 아니 랑종도 이게 되네서 이교 자반되네 샤자체 타당 저 우마치모 너는 군대 조천 시장자 직시 군동 도비 댕토 표승이 지송요레스
직시
이교의 자바 다자 전부 타당 저 꼬마 전부 다 대탐지에는 대바데 조바 전부 다 도스진에 다 대탐지에는 직신에 되니 군제 도고 쇼송이 지워레스.
And so the third Karmapa, Rangchen Dorje, he said that the state beyond any kind of mental examination or mental activity is called the Mahamudra. The state beyond any conceptual elaboration or beyond any extreme is the great Madhyamaka. And all of that is the great perfection. And so may we, by knowing one thing, realize everything.
That's 다 디 강들 다 거니 공부했지. 다양 흉종왕도 감에 잡종지 저바 빵랑매도 등러와 그게 열매 랑샘 랑렉 샘난 sol 리버 레도매도 등러와서 다 디나는 조 내가 또 저바당 리원이.
And so then in the next verses, it reads, in a state of natural spontaneity, train in being free of holding anything back. People of Dingri, in the action, there's nothing to abandon or adopt. The four bodies, indivisible, are complete in your mind. People of Dingri, the fruit is beyond all hope and doubt. And so these two verses are talking about the conduct and the result.
그래서 다 줘봤으니데 다 소보됐더니 나랑 저거 다 지톱지 녀래다 자체제네. 얘네 다단디나라 빼나 얘네 흉종하던 감이 썰종지에서 다디 소보되네 다 지톱 되네 라랜다 파양 들고와 되네 다 장집지 샘긴낭 장집 숨비게 되네 지야 되이나 다 나서 대지어와 다 얘네 죽박 베네다 죽박 장접지 샘스 되네 다 때라페 에네 다 장접지 샘 너나 되네 냠내나 되네 럼바이겐데 제 랍고요레스 베네다 짐바 소참 조바 전들라서 밤도나 때서도기다 맞죠. 애니 다 joba tamjeyang, teni ta zo, ta te tamjiga pena zangchub semji. Teni nyamlen tang rarje jine teni yenpengi shawa dropo gore. Ma to teni yang nga karasa semba zambo je, dadi ya sengen je, teni te chikbu ka tukime doa. Teni ta yenpengi shawa la ngusu ki pa zomje. Teni yen la penba drobya. Teni gewa drobya. O ta tusi.
And so primarily when we're using the word conduct, then we're talking about something that you're doing in your subsequent, what's called subsequent attainment or post-meditative period. So after you're talking about your day-to-day conduct, like outside of your formal meditation practice. But so that needs to be, connected to, we need to maintain that connection with our meditative practice. We need to bring that practice into our post-meditative experience. And so if you are a bodhisattva, then you should be training in terms of your conduct in those aspects of what we call the engaged bodhicitta. And so we need a bodhisattva then trains subsequently or, step by step in these trainings of engaged bodhicitta, starting off with generosity and discipline, patient forbearance, diligence, and so forth. And so all of these modes of conduct are the practices of a bodhisattva. And so it's in connection with those type of activities that a bodhisattva then engages in some kind of altruistic activity, some kind of, in terms of their conduct, they're actually doing something helpful. And so it's not said that a bodhisattva should just sit around and develop an altruistic mind and not do anything. It's that you should actually directly engage in some kind of activities in order to help others and accomplish virtue and work for the benefit of others. Listen.
Oh, so tini ta dini mala tini pache tini chik karasa gore. Ta karma be song ya be zon rawchi. Eni ta kanta wopcha zo chen so tamchi chik pache ja chik eni tmu ga sab jana wchi la drongen rawchi to. Kanta tini ta ma dorje tikbala jarna ya mo choba chi mi do sam. Eni ta kanta yang ene ta zo ta ene ta sanga dorje tikbala tene ta nga zo pen lam paru de chimbal tene nga zo eden drive ta yang sanga dorje tikbala lobu do o tene che ta di mejo te halam tene ta tawi chi godang ro chi orwa ta ti chen ta chaja chimbo ro tene ta ka ene zoba chimbo kawala chi drena ya tene halam draje ya pa che shas.
And so now what we're moving into is more connected to, what we were discussing before in terms of that quote from the Karmapa. So talking about these paths of practice of the great middle way, the Mahamudra, and the great perfection or Dzogchen. And so these are, kind of common trainings for any of those three paths. And so we're moving into, teachings on Vajrayana. And so I think it would be, safe to say, or it would not be inappropriate to say that the subsequent verses are dealing with Vajrayana. And so in terms of that, then we're talking about our fundamental path of the perfections or the perfection vehicle, and then what we call the resultant vehicle or the resultant path or resultant vehicle of Vajrayana. And so what's coming here now, I think, it could be explained in connection with either, Mahamudra or Dzogchen equally. That's Rinpoche.
That's all. Today, song that tell ma kare resena any jobala panglang mepa jiwala redo mepa songwa. Ta today song zang tene dona tayang kolli jitzawa rikpi semlan deus kolli tene karase kolli jitzawa tamchi rikpi semlan deba tene semla ngopo medo se tayang tene sikedo kamsa ta tene ma ta pache zogo tene lam shaja chimbodrawo ta pena dos chela ma tene jarwa yena tene kito dos.
And so then, as it said here, in the action, there's nothing to abandon or adopt. And then in 54, it says the fruit is beyond all hope and doubt, doesn't it? And so then moving into the next verse, it says the root of samsara nirvana is to be found within your mind. People of Dingri, the mind is free of any reality. So now I think we could say that we can apply this to, or we can talk about this in terms of what we call the path of Mahamudra. Let's.
다 자바드니 가조다 셈는데 송라다 자바 셈. 다 베는 열탐kel 파다 떼송바이나 열 랑게제 마도바 열탐kel 저 셈나 톨되죠. 에네 탐지에 참은 가조 랑게 되네 셈제 나와. 나래와 열때 답변 셈제 문자바 되네 소소게 나와 열바. 다 대탐제 나와 미나버. 가르레스나 다티 소소게 에네 셈지 아니 소소게 다 대답지 소소게 셈지 나와라 말도 해야죠 말아 다 대답지를 때문에 출 때바이나 대답지 소소게 되네 열라 때비 열랑게 말도 셈을 더 대봐 셈라 때나 되네 셈라 때네 뭐 보면 봐 다 셈되네 랑게 말도 봐
And so,
and
so then it's saying that, samsara nirvana, they are rooted in your own mind. And so all of those objects, objects of mind are not inherently existent, but really come down and meet with your mind. And so they are all, appearances of the mind. And those things can all appear differently to different beings because they are appearances of the mind. And so when you look out at objects, if you really seek out the objects, you find that they don't inherently exist, but are just appearances of the mind. But then when you seek out the mind itself, you find out that mind itself also is free of any true reality. And so that's what we call like this path of Mahamudra, this the way this is being discussed.
다 차당나와 잘람 제면라 냠라 셴바 메도 딩러와 추고 제면 님이 님본라 Hola, Sadrub Medo, Tingravas, da Kantar Young, in it that any Nawala Tebayina, didn't know what any chick Rangjamado, Pena, Shalam Jimes, then it was any Shannon, California, any person with J or Marwa, then again. Donna, then it is what I'm Gombe Capsule, that. 곰베게 냠제메바 아니 다 리벌라더니 양 추군님본 니미님본라 얼라 서르메도 들어와 다티니 어서게네도 히오도와 너나더니 셈제 이니치 셈나 셈 맘치테 셈제랑이노 어서라 오송도 다야 셈데 찜에 장외지 레마 송바 이니 휴국 힘보대 배는 되니 님하게 힘보던라 이네 대답하고 되니 배드께서 에네 어설라 드비오메도 스타틱 돈다 어설 되니 무슨 다치 어설 답에 어설 샤자 첨보 성은다고 다 어설 조과 첨보 다고 어설게네도 땡도와
Desire and hate appear, but like birds in flight, should leave no trace behind. People of Dingri in meditation be free of clinging to experiences. The unborn absolute body is like the very heart of the sun. People of Dingri, there is no waxing or waning of its radiant clarity. And so in brief, what we're talking about here is if you look at those appearances, you see, or those perceptions or individual appearances, you see that they don't truly exist. And that they pass away just like they don't leave any trace, just like birds flying in the sky, how there's no trace left in the sky of the bird's path. And so when we are meditating, then we shouldn't have any grasping at any experience that appears in our meditation. And so and it says that is talking about then this result in terms of this state of luminosity. And so as it said in the quote, the famous quote, that's there is no mind in mind, or mind does not exist in mind, but mind itself is, the nature of mind itself is luminosity. And so mind isn't utterly non-existent, but it has this essence of Dharmakaya. This word absolute, unborn absolute body is the Dharmakaya here. And so it has this, it's not utterly non-existent, but has this essence of Dharmakaya, which is just like the essence of the sun, which is that luminosity is always radiating and does not have any waxing or waning in terms of its radiance. And so then we often use the terms, you know, the luminosity of Mahamudra, or the luminosity of the great perfection. Thus.
Tini yang mala tini ngaso namdo dalang kangkong kumanda nola shoto medo tingrawa solwa jimi chuye rumonda chonang ginze medo tingrawa bakcha tenzin namkin jarinda chadang xiancha nguzong medo tingrawa jowa tangpa tingder nimandra semla lote medo tingrawa Zime Randro Kisser Londandra, Yola Hienze Medo, Tingrava, Rikpa Mimi Namki Jatandra, Nyamla Toto Medo, Tingrava, sir. Ota, Tinimata, Trukyo, any resom de Palatini, or Tinita Kutumaya, Yam Shea, yes.
That's. And so now I'm going to explain verses 58 through 63 together. So those read, thoughts come and go like a thief in an empty house. People of Dingri, in fact, there's nothing to be gained or lost. Sensations leave no imprints like drawings made on water. People of Dingri, don't perpetuate deluded appearances. Thoughts of attachment and aversion are like rainbows in the sky. People of Dingri, there's nothing in them to be grasped or apprehended. Mind's movements dissolve by themselves like clouds in the sky. People of Dingri, in mind, there are no reference points. Without fixation, thoughts are freed by themselves, like the people of Dingri, which never clings to any object. Pure awareness is without fixation, like a rainbow in the sky. People of Dingri, experiences arise quite unimpededly. Thus.
다 되는 강하다 다 되니마 쪼대 아니 다다다가 좀 아니 배들이 다 중과 강하다 되는 남도도서 가르스 시기네 포토마 졸로그 되게 송도와 배나 되는 거랑 또 남도 배르께서는 아니 다 달랑 받서 배나 다 남도 랑로 강동지 꾸마단라와 소와지메 최 로모단라와 박차 전쟁 네 탐지 다 가서 남긴 야리 땅라와 너나 때니 조와 랑당 찡더리 니마단라와 제메 랑로 찌서지 롱단라와 오다 또 전에 다 대탐지 다 뺏겨서 쪼보다 아니 다 빼당 결제지니 오다 두지.
And so what's being talked about here, if we connect this with the path of the great perfection, is what we call the way things are freed, or the way things are liberated. And so talking about that self-liberation or natural liberation. And so, you know, when a thought arises, how is it that it is free, or how is it that it is liberated? And so it's given many examples here in terms of the way that thoughts are freed. And so there's these examples like thoughts come and go like a thief in an empty house. Sensations leave no imprints like drawings made on water. Thoughts of attachment and aversion are like rainbows in the sky. Mind's movement dissolve by themselves like clouds in the sky. They're freed by themselves like the wind. Like a rainbow in the sky, and you know, like the dream of a mute, and so forth. Thus.
다 릭방음에 남기 야단라 냠나 포도메도 딩러와 춘이 또 꼭이 말함라 색다 타니에 잘로 딩러와 또비 냠케 연이 대완라 데니 갑데 조도메도 딩러와 sartung yarme chinang davandra kaangla thodok me to tingrawa nangdong yarme nangka tongbandra semla tabi me to tingrawa Tremba yingme gimme melonda, dela junta meto, dingrava, Riton Yarme Melon Zunghenda, dela Chenga meto, dingrava se, Tayang Dinchiko Padma.
That's it. And so then, pure awareness is without fixation, like a rainbow in the sky. People of Dingri, experiences arise quite unimpededly. Realization of the absolute nature is like the dream of a mute. People of Dingri, there are no words to express it. Realization is like a youthful maiden's pleasure. People of Dingri, the joy and bliss cannot be described. Clarity and emptiness are like the moon reflecting in water. People of Dingri, there is nothing to be attached to and nothing to impede. Appearances and emptiness, inseparable, are like the empty sky. People of Dingri, the mind is without either center or periphery. The mind with no thought and no distraction is left like the mirror of a beauty. People of Dingri, it is free of any theoretical tenets. Awareness and emptiness inseparable are like the reflections in a mirror. People of Dingri, nothing is born there and nothing ceases. Listen.
다 배나 아니 꼭꼭 물람단다베 다 배나섬 주미 송거와 꼭꼭 물람단다베 사이다 다니메 또비게 이시 아니 요니 데마다 드라베스 아니 다 가르세 아니 갑디 조드메 돌라테 사통 야르메 쳐난게 다와터 도베스 강라 착도메소 Any Nangdong Nangkadan Ravi, Semlan Tabime. Any da, any Trendong Gimum Melon Ravi, Hela Junta Mes. Any Ripon Melong Zunye than Ravi, Hela Jenga Mes.
And so then, pure awareness. Pure awareness itself is like a rainbow in the sky. And the realization of the absolute nature is like the dream of a mute. And what's meant by that is that it's it's inexpressible, unthinkable, and unspeakable. The realization is like a youthful maiden's pleasure, just as its bliss and joy can't be described. Clarity and emptiness united are like the moon reflected in water, in that there's nothing to be attached to and nothing to impede. Appearances and emptiness are inseparable like the empty sky, in that the mind is without center or periphery. The mind without thought and distraction is like the mirror of a beauty, in that it is free of any theoretical tenets. Let's.
Dona, the name around Zoga, Nang Yindo, any Dona, Yindo, Nawa, Reva, Dona Tene, Tena Yita, Dona Tene, Tata, Nang, any Deton, Sarton. Any chanton, Dona Tata, Jita, any Ombala, Tabu Meba, any Tela Zimba Meba. Tineta Petchus or the Tushia.
And so to summarize then, what's being talked about is just as things appear, so they are empty. And so that's the unity of appearance emptiness, the unity of bliss emptiness, the unity of clarity emptiness, the unity of thought emptiness. And so that emptiness is without any center or periphery and should be without any grasping. Listen.
Cornde round shibi zemonda semla jenga medo tingrava son ni dayang nga zu ni garasegor ni nangwik da garase da nangwala rang yinje mado pa pena ta nga zu zok tamche ni Nangdong, any drat tracton, any ta sem ge tatangazo namdog, any chick tet jorva, that is what I'm any coba, any jujian emdrel, any chick rale de pa yin ta tan do na so tan je ane do na ta ene ik ta ba yin na te tam je tene nga su tam je tene rang yin je ma do ba tene ta do na tene ri kong tra kong nang kong sene ta tan je do na pe ne ane kong yin do nang yin do kong ba ta ti ke je tene nga su ta pe tene tra mi na ma bo do wa do na tene ta ene kondi rang ro shi pi tsa mon ra konde tamje ene ta ri pa nami ngole tena shibi tsemo tan rawa chur semla tena tene ta nga zo jenga de me semla tene eso me ba dona tene semla jenga me ba tene de tamje ta pen ene chi nang ta tamje ta zo ta ko zo semni juba da trava te ngangso ene ta mande ba me ba yinzang ini senang coba rang ke semnandi charom churishyo tengrawa se tene ta thado gute tamchi tam dona tene ta ini nawa tamchi sem tamchi tene rangi je maro pat pongba ini pongba ni tene ta ngar to ini deyang ta chuni gyum ta ngar to ini ta yome je chupe ta tamchi ta trawa oda tuschi tene ta te ta pene chagya chimbo ta zo ene ta wi tole so we bre
Bliss and emptiness are inseparable. Bliss and emptiness inseparable are like the sun lighting up the snows. This is number 70. People of Dingri, there's nothing there to be apprehended. Nothing there to apprehend. Diluted talk will fade without a trace like echoes. People of Dingri, in sound, there's nothing to be grasped. Happiness and suffering through a mechanism like the sound of a lute's body and strings. People of Dingri are produced when actions are combined with necessary conditions. The natural freedom of samsara nirvana is like a children's game. People of Dingri have a mind without any aims. Your notions of the outer world derive from the mind within. People of Dingri, let the solid ice be melted into liquid. And so none of these things that appear have any true existence or are in any way inherently existing. And so all forms are appearance emptiness, all sounds are resounding or sound emptiness. And all of our thoughts are just a interdependent connection of causes and conditions that lead them to arise, and which means that they are emptiness, that everything is emptiness. And then everything has the state of natural emptiness. And so it is not the case that anything is like solid or permanent, but rather it is the case that nothing is inherently existing and nothing is permanent or fixed in any way. And so when we examine these things from the perspective of their appearances, their conventional appearances, then they're just like a children's game. But then ultimately that mind itself is has no particular point of focus. It has no birth and no cessation. It has no concept of inner or outer. It's completely free from any conceptual elaborations. And so that state of emptiness is everything is contained within that state of emptiness, which is the freedom from all conceptual elaborations. And so all appearances then are appearances of the mind, and that mind itself has no inherent existence, but is emptiness. And so that is that emptiness, which is the freedom from all conceptual elaboration. So all of this is being discussed from the perspective of that view of freedom from conceptual elaborations, or what we could call the view of the Mahamudra. That's Rinpoche.
Yes, Dayang Mare Chungor any Pangla Chidunda, Kalpi Kipamedo, Tingrawa, Kondi Chunang, Kondi and Tropa, Drazun Shepherd, that in Indo, Kondi Chunang, Drazun Chawan, Pachem Kondi Tropa, Drazun Chet and Dra, Ramda Lama, Beijing, Deyasare, Chimat. Any Ramda Lama Labo, Tingrawa, Senta. Dorna, tinitanga to any Marigua, Tam Dona Tini Yom Bala Sopato Tamches, any Chetanga, Kagna Tini, Ho Rayingatine, Katwaji, your Mariso. Yinayam, that day Tamchi, Benatarangaranzo, any more Sheba Chechene, ene ta de tamche ta pena ene yang ko rangin maybe ngal pa rangru de drop go rewa inde sonta ene de tamche la ta ene la yang pena ta ngarang zo ene ramda sen ta te nagi ki pache tene kondi chunang dravzun chabra ramda lama la ko tinwa se 다 대탐제게 촌낭탐제 예쁘면 촌낭 모시버 제제네스 애니 다 대탐제게 빼는 쳐서 애니야 다 모시소나 양 촌낭도 탐제 고파 애니 제메서 열쪽으로 와다 대자부치 다 대조대되네 도스치네 송이니 바라스.
And so then here it says that the mechanism of ignorance is like the gush of a meadow spring. People of Dingri, it cannot be halted by obstructing it. The delusions of samsara nirvana are like coming face to face with an enemy. People of Dingri, as your ally, practice virtue. And so there's a little bit of variation in the Tibetan text here, but generally what's being said here is that your ignorance and all of your afflictive mental states and emotions, you know, they are not something that you can just stop. They're not something that you can just block or cut off, but rather you should try to recognize their nature. And it is through recognizing their nature that they can be left to their natural freedom or can be left to their state of natural liberation. And so then, and so it's that all of these, you know, machinations of ignorance, of ignorance and its subsequent, you know, afflictions and afflictive emotions and so forth, that you can't just stop them, that they're going to keep on coming like this stream. But that one can recognize them, and if one recognizes the true nature of them, then they will dissipate without any trace. That's Rinpoche.
Ini kungarang seling piebandra, ini seling davandra, piebandra se Indo sudah kungarang seling darwandra te aku sere, kukano ni apa? Kungarang seling darwandra, redo palung mabje tinggawa sini ta, driba tini ta ngarang jog ta ti ta kunga. Teni rangsar selling the one redopana maji tingrava stati zogo teni dream sheche that tik palatini zota tata chaja chimbo that zo yelam jivata jivata bitani tang yes.
The natural clarity of the five kayas, the five aspects of enlightenment, is like the expanse of a continent of gold. People of Dingri, there's no hope or doubt, attachment or aversion. And so here we've been talking about, up to here, we've been talking about the actual, you know, practice of meditation, but now we're talking about the resultant state when it's here talking about these five kayas or five Buddha bodies, which are self-evident or self-luminous to one's experience. And so this is, you know, been talking about here, the ground, path, and fruition states of Mahamudra. Listen.
Ta tini ta ma chitanga lopso da wuchi resha ta tini ta chitanga sabja wuchi las ta tini tamjor melu rinche tanda temi chuzu ma ge tinraba as ta tamjor melu de chuzu ma dans tiken sorju tiken chuzu yevyen novanda zaya nyabar ka tinraba Send togo jeter hikan chick and dodo chula dorshing tingrava. Yombetus, Yombetus, Katop Yamachi, gaining young merchant tingrava. That donatine, Tamjojimilla Trola Matan, any that Tibachimbuk, any ta any chutor tetawich, any ta mauba niegmare. This one that take it in a bay, Yamlan best. Any that said the over the carina tricked over it, and Todong Gitachi, Chuya, which yes, Mr. Galochin John so, any unique capsule, any Yamlet Matomati, Gango Chadu, any Zupog Yamlet Matopa, then a neg, not then a 10 like a Kanga Chimbo Chagar, this on the Lochong, Capsule, in a pair. chula tonang jis.
With its freedoms and advantages, so what's left here are just some more general types of advice. And so from 78, it says, with its freedoms and advantages, human life is like a treasure island. People of Dingri do not come back empty-handed. Do not come back empty-handed failure. Do not come back an empty-handed failure. The practice of the great vehicle is like a wish-fulfilling gem. People of Dingri, however hard you search, it'll be difficult to find again. For this life, come what may, you'll have enough to eat and clothe yourself. People of Dingri, put everything you have into practicing the Dharma. While you're young, practice hard and with austerities. People of Dingri, once you're old, your constitution won't withstand it. So what's being said here then is don't let this precious opportunity go to waste right now when you have this precious human rebirth with its freedoms and advantages. And then this practice, or this meeting with this practice of the great vehicle, is like a wish-fulfilling gem that will be, you found it now and you may not find it again in the future. And then particularly for those people who, and then, things in life, just the general things you need to live in life, food and clothing and so forth, that'll work itself out. And instead of focusing on that, you should focus on your Dharma practice. And then particularly for the young people, it says that while you're young, you should work hard and practice austerely, because once you're old, your body's not going to be able to do it. You're going to be held down by illness and everything's going to become much more difficult. So while you're young, you should put your efforts into the Dharma practice and pay attention to the Dharma. Lesser.
다리 쫀르젤라 랑사송 셴니 가르제메도 등러와 다리 무콘 콘든 남셔요 듭지 사마제인 등러와 첼 놈이 짜기 서반다 레로 뇽리 뽕히 등러와 다리인데니 동난 되잖아 물리치니 까오 등러와 생이다 양 디닝하는 주변에 아니 좀다 가르친 거잖아 아니 녀모 레봉도 값어 아니 녀모터서 참바르지스 아니 다양 값값서 코믹 동화 참바르지 아니 값양 가르다 아니 양 값값서 야더니 손더블렘 dorna tini zonrujes tata rang lakpal yodu kapso zonruje tata tini ngana so tamjul julu tini che thobde tini ma khomba yena tini juma tini te trawo ko raga mares ta tari te tini pen tu ya sama lenchin trawo yingte eni chetela eni onze matans lome matans 다리 때문에 빼드겠으다 아니 물lut 도매 송송나 아니 동산 레소나 때문에 양께도 때문에 아주 아니 치수 물lut 더 깔래 가보레스 그래서 다때서 담게 빼지 라브자 다 쪼었더니 줘야 보지 냠내야 보지 대양 치들 마야 다다랑 되니 냠내지스 어느 다때 쪼 파제더니 로총돼서 파제더니 송이었어레스.
And so then, when emotions arise, bring antidotes. When emotions arise, bring antidotes to bear on them. People of Dingri, let free all concepts in their very nature. Think from time to time of all the defects of samsara. People of Dingri, that will make your faith become much clearer. Right now, develop the diligence and stand your ground. People of Dingri, when you die, it will guide you on the path. If you're not free now, when will you ever get free? People of Dingri, your chance to eat only comes one time in 100. Life is so ephemeral, like dew on the grass. People of Dingri, don't yield to laziness and indifference. From where you are now, should you lose your footing, people of Dingri, it'll be hard to find a human life again. So all of these are just general advices on, encouraging us to practice the Dharma. And so it's saying that, when the afflictions arise, that you should remember the antidotes and remember to apply those antidotes. And that, sometimes you apply those antidotes. Sometimes you should make supplications, and that And so you should remember those defects of samsara and so forth. And so now, when you have this opportunity and when you have these practices and when you have this, this precious human rebirth with its freedoms and advantages, if you don't have time to do practice now, when you have this opportunity, when are you ever going to find the time? And so it said, the example is like that, if you only get to eat like 1 in 100 times, right now you've got your opportunity to eat and you should eat. So you shouldn't allow this precious opportunity to go to waste. You shouldn't allow this opportunity to become meaningless. And so if it becomes meaningless, it's going to be very difficult for us to ever find such a precious experience or precious opportunity ever again. And so these are, primarily pieces of advice, which maybe are mainly directed towards, the young people out there. Listen.
Deba Jenji Jorwa, Jormi Lam Nevi, Corby Neme Somchi, Tingrava, Trunget and Jonge Shokungo, Bangbo, Samla Sorchi, Tingrava, Dick with Tropo Punshi, Tingrava, and Trozang and a Yante Shokunjong, gave it Hinet and shit, Tingrava, and Yojun, Yojun Rang Dang, Yang, look. Bangbo Samla Chorshi, Tingrava, Marik Tropi Pungri Zaba Yin, Xie Tramba Songshi, Tingrava, any Tongla to some Yoni, Niambo Tola Dench, Tongla to some Yona, Lamta Nye, Niambo Tola Dench, Tingravas, all as a tatini o Matayang. That's what in a young Labjati, Donata, Cadebo. Oh, that Mele John the Mill Carset Cadebo Melishi, my shake, Rang at the John the Rang at the so starting. Any that Mixer getting around to. Zambo la ten, strong about my dance, there are strong about a tenant in the job about show gore. Then it throws Zambo la ten. Yojugi yam mala. And that's our tatang around to pen rang John, no song, Rava. Tropi pungre set that Marek, but it didn't trubatum gets sourdore. Then in Junda, Chamba the heaving and told a ten. Any na yenge da any nyom what the so da leundu kapso tini nyembo leba chichini tini mam bonjomchi dorna tini da zonru yapo cheshos.
The Buddhist teaching is like the sun shining through the clouds. People of Dingri, now is the one time that is present. You say such clever things to people, but don't apply them to yourself. People of Dingri, the faults within you are the ones to be exposed. The faith, that faith succumbs to circumstance is only a short step away. People of Dingri contemplate samsara's imperfections. Frequenting evil friends is bound to make your own behavior evil. People of Dingri, abandon any friendships that are negative. Frequenting virtuous friends is bound to make your own good qualities arise. People of Dingri, follow your spiritual teachers. Deception and lies deceive not only others, but deceive yourself as well. People of Dingri, as witness, take your own conscience. Delusion born from ignorance is the worst disaster-bearing demon. People of Dingri, hold fast to your vigilance and mindfulness. If you don't hold on to the 3 or 5 poisons, the path is near. People of Dingri, generate powerful antidotes against them. And so what's being said here is more advice, which in brief comes down to don't just say a bunch of clever things and don't point out, faults of others, but look at your own faults. And particularly then, we also avoid, interacting with negative friends, because if we spend time with them, then that negativity, that bad behavior and so forth is going to rub off on us. But we should rather spend our time with virtuous friends, with spiritual teachers and spiritual friends and so forth. And so we shouldn't deceive others. We shouldn't deceive ourselves and others, but primarily we should be looking at our own faults. And so, as it said again, that that this the delusion is born from ignorance. So ignorance itself is the root of our delusion and the root of our afflictions. And when those arise, then we need to hold fast to our vigilance and mindfulness. And we need to rely upon those qualities of vigilance and mindfulness. And so with that vigilance and mindfulness, when those afflictions arise, then we should be able to remember, we should be able to be mindful of and remember the antidotes to those, and immediately bear those down upon and eliminate those afflictive mental states. So then, and so in brief, it's saying that we should use all of these things and train as such, and really put our efforts into these practices. Less.
Then that's on top chungwe. 상매자 고자 라버지시 등러와 박자 윤 로윤 링위 침대 네바 제족 마비 제주 네바 제주 인기로 마비 등러와 샘라 고도 총나 소와토 똑바 쇼르 차용 등러와 치마르 기보다 너나 녹샘께 상지 짠다고 등러봐. 올라서 다 돌되나스. 아니 존르메나. 아니 다다가 저 상이가 말했어. 아니 냠내는 존르지스. 다 나랑 저거 박혀돼서 연을 보선다 양의 양도 립거와. 근데 대소라 거서 바캬스나 지트 마디스 양 샘라지 뽕과들이 샤그멘도나 소와토스 에니 아타 돌드나스 타치 에니 치마 에니 동하르 mendo나 에니 데와 도고 요나 에니 타타레 에니 쫀드 점나 에니 상지 랑나 도스 상지 치라도 랑나 도스 상 어제 메지데 차란소레스 다 아니 수그드네 제 있는 냠내 제저를 잡나데 상제로르면 다 르도르와 도스레스 되네 아자라 다 미니 연을 뭐 더고 말레스 아 차란소 다다 샘나 돈도 쩌네 야그레스 다 타마데르도 아니 나게짱 남이 메파도 드바치야바이 체 남짱 되네 다 나기 예수 쇼과 남지장 대나기 남쇼 세워다 때려야더니 다들 담아내.
If your perseverance has no strength, you will not reach Buddhahood. People of Dingri, make sure you don that armor. Habitual tendencies, being old acquaintances, keep coming back. People of Dingri, don't go on following the past. If your understanding and realization are weak, pray to your Lord Teacher, people of Dingri, and deep meditation will be born in you. If you aspire to happiness in the future, accept your present trials. People of Dingri, then Buddhahood is right here, just beside you. And so I'm saying in brief, if you don't have that diligence, then you won't become Buddhahood. You won't become Buddha, you won't attain Buddhahood. And so therefore you should make efforts at that practice. And so because you've had these habitual tendencies for such a long time, then they keep on coming up. But if you keep on maintaining the continuity of that habitual pattern, of those mental imprints and those habitual patterns, then you're going to be in trouble. So you should try to stop that continuity and not continue in those past habits. And if your practice is weak, if your understanding and realization are weak, then you should supplicate to your guru. And so in the future, if you wish for happiness and you don't want suffering, then you need to make efforts. And so if you make those efforts, then he's saying Buddhahood is within you. As it said here, Buddhahood is right here with you. So you have Buddhahood within you, but whether you actually can manifest that, whether you can actually, attain that for yourself or make that real for yourself or not, is really up to your own diligence. So if you can apply yourself diligently, then you will attain that. If you can't, then you'll be left aside. And so then he says at the end, this old Indian master will not stay in Dingri, he will go away. People of Dingri, it's now that you must clarify your doubts. So he said, me, the old master, I won't be here for much longer. So if you have any doubts, make sure you get through them right now. And then he says, I've practiced without distraction. People of Dingri, you should follow this example. So he said, just as I have made these efforts, you should also do that as well. That's Rinpoche.
그래서 다 강들더니 비아당 찍도스 다양 뛰노는 가시를 뛰노는 양 옛날들이 가시 뛰더니 티베트를 가시 여사래 강들 다 뛰노는 마 아니 다 때려 되네 다 다른가 겁자대 아니 딱 토보 마보 아니 다 가서 쓰내야지 고지 여바 수게나 팬토바도 되네 뛰노는 다 찍처럼 냠솔에 지난주 드롭트가 가세 여바데 되니 야보다 아니 냠네지 삼로땅 아니 소소게 살마 아니 고르지지 드레체 쇼스 되네 바체다 저 창로도
Laoya. And so that is 101, verses here, pieces of advice here, and there are some extra ones here as well in our text. But anyway, primarily, these pieces of advice are meaningful and beneficial both to people at higher and lower levels of practice, and so they're very meaningful, very meaningful and very helpful. And so you should, whatever pieces of these practice you feel able to do, those ones that you can put into practice, then do them. Put them into practice. Think about them and apply them to your mind. Lesson.
라서 되니 다르게 되니 말한주 니만 닉 나라 되니 야 다양지 말한주 냠도 체제 되니 냠도 다파 양 깨져야 돼 고급 종이 가보 종 되니 다 지난주야 얘네 다다다 나주 망보지라 다지 선발 강내 요래 얘네 망보민에다 참말로 열어봐 강에 열에 샘제 열에 다 연아양 다 말아돌지 탑시 매봐 되니 답마 드레스지는 남관에 토홍원다고 집에 얘네 다 대저지 대대 다 참하게 샘발라 얘네 지금 그때 스코도 다 간다 대다고 동하나 강에 홍도 값을 되니 소속의 샘바때 대보제 톱 거의 양보제 톱 흘러제 톱나 근데 뒤랑게 강에게 korpo 마용야다 얘네 르고 쳐대나야 팽그래 냠내나야 팽그래 다 제나 쟁가서 팽도 연어 가나서 지제고라 팽도는 요 말와 제장가 때네 대외장 때네 지나도 장이 삼로 도시제 땅 때네 삼삼아 때네 지스 냠내 시라게 냠내 땅 얘네 때나기 장접지 샘지 냠내 돼서 양이 양도 제바이나 다 돼서 다 다다게 값 바발라타 매야 슈레 얘네 다 대라고 가르쳐 그러고 현달을 뇨야 로고 말아 얘네 양 말아야 막어제 얘네 양 샘지 매바도서 카바 땅네 양 드리서 막고 제거나 야 배하도서 간가 조도도 얘네 랑게 샘지 매바데 랑게 제 얘네 샘데서 마 지고 땅네 요로난 얘네 다 트랭케자 테랑 인스.
And so now for these 2 days that we could all meet and that we could have this discussion, I'm very happy to have had this opportunity. And so I know that all of us are having a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems, mental problems, but it's not that we don't have anything we can do about it. So we all, when these kind of difficulties or sufferings are coming up in our mind, then if we can bring ourselves some comfort, if we can make our minds more open, if we can bring our minds to a state of, calm, relaxation, then we don't have to carry that burden of that anguish or that suffering. And it's really good for our minds. It's really healthy for our bodies. It's going to be helpful for us to be able to, continue in our practices and so forth. And so, if something's helpful, then we should do it. And just sitting around feeling bad isn't helpful. So we shouldn't do it. We should apply ourselves in these practices. And so sometimes we should, apply ourselves in the practices of meditation, in the trainings of bodhicitta, and so forth. And so this is really the best medicine for us right now. And so otherwise, we don't, it's not something that we have to go to buy somewhere else. And if we, rely upon someone else and try and call some other doctor to try and fix us, then we'll spend all of our money on some kind of teleconference kind of thing. But otherwise, if you can, treat yourself with your own medicine, then that's the best thing. So I think, I wish you all, to be able to do that and to be able to, keep your happiness and so forth. So that's it.
Lasso, any any. Okay. Good night.
Good night.